you talked about Houston and CJ Stroud. There's a lot of questions now, right? After the 2 playoff games. Think about that situation. They're going to pick up I think maybe they already have exercise his 5th-year option, but if you're CJ Stroud's agent, you're going in there and saying, look, all the other big-time quarterbacks, they got paid after their 3rd year, and we want $60 million a year. And so I just think that the people in that building that are around him every day, CJ Stroud, they're the ones that are going to have to make a decision on this guy. Is this guy we want leading our building? Because once you pay a dude $60 million a year, it's not just about his play on Sundays. It's about his daily habits. It's about his leadership ability, and it's about everything in between. He's going to set the tone for the entire building. And so they've got some big decisions to make. And this situation is going to be interesting this offseason because who knows what CJ Stroud does. I mean, if they don't give him the contract, is he going to sit and wait and say, guys, I'm not showing up until you pay me? Because that's probably the advice that his agent is going to give him. And so you look at their year overall, Davis Mills steps in, does a great job placeholder for CJ when he was out with a concussion for those weeks. Did it feel like it was a huge drop-off when Davis Mills was in? Not really. And so I just think that this is one to keep an eye on because I think it could get ugly this offseason. But if you have hesitations about CJ Stroud being the face of your franchise, I think, this is me not knowing anything, I think there's a chance maybe you trade him this offseason. And I'm not one to sit here and have the hot takes and do all that. But if you know what you have in CJ Stroud and you don't know that that's what you want to give $60 million a year to, then I promise you there's going to be some other teams that need quarterbacks. They're going to go get him in a hurry. There's some teams with great infrastructures that are waiting on a quarterback. The Vikings, if Stafford retires, the Rams maybe. Stefanski just went to Atlanta. Yeah, they've got Michael Penix, but he's been hurt a bunch. He wouldn't mind having CJ Stroud in Atlanta. Or if you're the Texans, you're thinking about, gosh, there are a bunch of other quarterback needy teams. The Jets, they may draft one. The Raiders, the Cardinals. Like, maybe you trade CJ Stroud if you don't think he's the guy that deserves $60 million a year. I just think it's interesting. I think they know what they have in CJ Stroud. Is it $60 million a year? I don't know if they're going to commit to that. And if they don't, maybe they should think about trading him.
Well, I think it is an interesting conversation because when you start thinking about this defense and how really young and talented and really, like, you look at this team, like, let's be real, they're in this situation because of how that group's played all season long. And if you could tell me, I would normally sit here and say, no way. And then when you tell me, man, how the guys kind of played, and then you look at it and go, how do we keep this young defense together? We're going to need money. And then also, how do we keep building on this defense and also putting together the offense we want? We need more weapons. That's a lot of draft picks and some capital space that you can go spend on keeping all the guys together. And so I think when you start to think about, man, Danielle Hunter's getting up there in age. Yes, he's still playing awesome. Are you going to be able to afford him and keep him in the building? And whatever that number is as the years go on, do you need to start drafting his replacement in the sense of somebody he could tutor and mentor because he's a special dude as well? Because when you start to enter this world where you just have Will Anderson, is he special? Yes. But if you only have one and Danielle Hunter's not there anymore in a couple of years, that's a totally different game from a defensive standpoint, how an offense plans for a guy. So I think you got to start to say, if we're going to be a defensive head coach and this is a rare defense we have, how do we keep that together? Maybe my point number one, that's like, hey, if we're going to put a priority together, I want to make sure this defense is really special. I want to make sure we have a really good offensive line and some weapons on offense, because to me, that's one of the places they've got to improve. The O-line's got to improve. You sent one of the best players in the NFL, Laramie Tunsil, to Washington, in the offseason. You got to start to have that kind of talent play in front of whoever the quarterback is, because I'm not paying CJ Stroud $60 million and continuing to have an offensive line that doesn't quite play to the standard that I'm going to need to protect a $60 million a year investment in the first place. So you got to figure that situation out. So I think it's complex. It's a complex situation. You just say you're going to write a big check to a quarterback.
Dude, it's complex. And I'm telling you, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense to me, because CJ Stroud is a very good football player. And you don't think that Kevin O'Connell watches him play and thinks, gosh, if I could get my hands on him, the things that I could do with him to help him, to guide him. But then you look at Seattle and it's like, okay, well, they're not paying a guy $60 million a year. They're paying a guy $30 million a year. Is there somebody like that? Is it Mac Jones? Is it Davis Mills, who's already in your building and under contract for another year, that potentially could be that guy that's going to be good enough? Because we saw it with their defense. Their defense is phenomenal, outstanding, tops in the league. You need a quarterback that's good enough, right? And so if you're not going to be willing to allocate $60 million because you want some of the resources to go elsewhere, how do we find that guy, that's Sam Darnold, the guy we can give 30 a year to keep us afloat, to put us in good situations, to play smart football? The more I think about it, the more likely I think it is. And I know that might sound crazy, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, Fitz, look at where D'Amico came from in San Francisco. I mean, Jimmy G was their answer for a while until they made all crazy trade, all the picks, everything for Trey Lance. That didn't even work out. They got lucky that Brock Purdy was the last guy available in the draft, and they got a hit on a huge player, right? But the reality was how did they build that team? If you remember the San Francisco 49ers, it was Jimmy had gotten hurt a few years there, who they had at quarterback. They kept having injuries. They were moving up to the front of the draft constantly because they were struggling with injuries and drafting tons of talent, even though they weren't necessarily trading for the picks. They were getting all these top level talent guys on defense, and that's how they became special, right? And so it's like that's how they became rare before they got Brock Purdy, while they were not spending quite as much money on a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo. Like D'Amico's seen some of that. So I think it is an interesting conversation that I'm not saying they're going to do it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it's one you got to sit in a room and have the conversation and go, how do we keep the entirety of our team at an elite level moving forward when we have a really good player, but do we or do we not want to pay him that kind of money moving forward?